right 4 tightens. Left 4 short tightens and left 4. Into left 5, 30.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to my first look at WRC8. Now, if you're into racing games, I have no doubt whatsoever that you've seen loads of information about this. For me personally, it's been filling up my YouTube feed from various sources and a lot of interesting details coming down about it. The main one that I wanted to focus on today was that a lot of people have been saying that it is the year for WRC and that there is every possibility that this game could take over from Dirt as probably the best rally game on PC and console. Now, as always, you have to take this information with a pinch of salt because a lot of these early reviews and early gameplays are obviously funded by the developer in some way. The guys are being flown out to try the games, or it's actually the developers themselves that are putting these videos together to tell you how great the game is. So I'm always a little bit skeptical until I get my hands on it, and this is the first time I've ever bought a WRC game on the day of release. Typically, I tend to buy them, to be honest, sort of a few months after they've come out. They normally get a little bit cheaper. It's not a franchise that's ever overly excited me because I've always been quite a big fan of Dirt. And that's an important point to make. I've been a big fan of the Dirt series of games for a long time, and even going back to Colin McRae as well. I was there for that and thoroughly enjoyed those games. It's a huge part of my gaming history. However, I want you guys to be aware that I'm viewing this completely impartially. I'm going to tell you exactly my experiences so far with the game and my thoughts, and I think you'll be surprised. So with that in mind, let's get straight into this, and I am going to be drawing comparisons between the two franchises probably quite often throughout this video. But that's not that I'm trying to fault one game or another, it's just that they're in the same market space and I feel like they are the main rivals to one another. Now, for me, in the past, whenever I've played WRC games, I've always come away feeling a little bit flat, and it tends to be down to the fact that the handling just doesn't feel quite right. If anything, I would say it feels a little bit dull. Now, I know that's difficult, and I'm going to draw my first comparison here, but when you go onto Dirt, and even Dirt Rally, when it's trying to take itself seriously and trying to be a simulator, the game still has an element of fun about it. The cars kind of will move where you want them to move, and it's always felt quite tight and how it's supposed to, in my head anyway, as a gamer. Whereas WRC never had that. It always felt quite punishing, difficult, and there was just that lack of fun, which, again, I know it sounds strange and it's not trying to be fun, it's not an arcade racer, but you still want to enjoy the way the cars feel whilst you're playing it. But I'm very pleased to say WRC8 actually feels like a completely different game altogether. They've gone well away from the previous WRC games, in my opinion anyway. I did just play 7 last week, trying to get sort of back into the swing of things, but I needn't have bothered because actually going on to WRC8, it feels much more like Dirt Rally, which in my opinion anyway is a really good thing. The cars move exactly where you would expect them to. The weight transfer feels fantastic. Every single button that you press feels like it's doing what it should be doing on the car. And at no point can you ever feel like it's the game's fault that you've come off the course, because you know full well you've pulled that handbrake a little bit too hard, which is why you've spun round, or you haven't hit the brakes quick enough, which is why you've gone off the course. So you have a real sense of trust within the vehicles that you're driving, a bit like you do with Dirt. And it's just, it's a great feeling game and a vast improvement on anything they've ever done before. The first thing I noticed when I started playing the game and loaded into my first event was just how good the sense of speed is. It actually took me by surprise for the first couple of goes, and I ended up having to restart because it's not like anything I've experienced in a rally game before, and they should feel like that. You imagine when you're driving through some woods and you've got trees about 2 meters away from each of your doors. It would feel like you're going so quick, and these guys have nailed this with this game. Dirt is nothing like this whatsoever. This is so fast, and it really puts you on edge, as it should do while you're racing through these sort of conditions that you could end up smashing into something pretty easily. So it makes you ease back a little bit into the corners, you take your time a little bit more, and that's the way it should be. It's rallying, it's dangerous, you've got to look after that car, and they've got this just right with this game. And the good news doesn't stop there. They've actually taken, or should I say professionally borrowed, a lot of really good features from various very good racing games, and they've put them all into this one, and they've been very wise with their choices, and it all comes together to create quite a good package overall. Now, I've always been a huge fan of the free roam areas that you get within the old Dirt games. So Dirt 3 particularly had a fantastic free roam area that you actually unlocked whilst progressing through the career. Now, WRC8 has got its own free roam area and it's fantastic. It's huge. You've got gymkhana areas, there's beautiful landscapes that you can race around and some old warehouses and things like that. And it's just a great addition to the game. It's a testing area really for you to try the different cars out. And yeah, I spent a lot of time here already and I will probably spend a lot more time there in the future. There's a great selection of cars to choose here as well. Right from the bat, you can try any of these out. There is cars from WRC, WRC2, they've even got WRC Juniors in there as well. And there's also a classic car section which has got things like your Lancia Deltas in there. So enough choice to keep you busy, and I have no doubt there will probably be DLCs for this game in the future which will bring us even more choice as well. All of the cars that I've tried so far have sounded absolutely amazing. It is a huge step up in audio over previous WRC games. And I quite often use a bonnet cam when I'm rallying. I just find the view much cleaner and easier to see where I'm going. And the sounds that pop out of that bonnet are unreal. You've got turbos whooshing up, dump valves going off. It just sounds so good. Visually, the game looks great. It's certainly a huge improvement over WRC7. Is it better than Dirt Rally? I think they're on a par, to be honest with you. Yeah, they're both good. They've got their own visual styles. The one thing I will say, if you're using a chase cam on WRC8, I'm not a huge fan of the way the cars look from the back. Whether that's just me or not, I'm not entirely sure, but they just didn't look quite right. But like I say, I'm normally in a bonnet cam or an inside car cam, and the views from there look, you know, really good. In terms of game modes, it's got absolutely everything you would expect from a current gen racer. You've obviously got that area that I spoke about before, the free roam area, where you can try your cars out. You've also got quick play, where you can select your own events and just set them up exactly how you want to. There's online multiplayer, and there's a really in-depth career mode, which I'm going to go through just now. So the career mode itself is actually really impressive. Like I said earlier, it feels like they've borrowed a few bits from various games to come up with this. But that's not a bad thing, because all the bits they've put into this have come from great games, and it makes a lot of sense. So in a very similar way to a lot of other racing games now, you're not just looking after yourself and driving a car. You've got a whole team to work with. You need to manage who you're employing, the kind of jobs they're doing. Obviously, there's more expensive staff members, which are going to cost you more money, but they're going to fix your car quicker, say. So it's a constant balancing act to get everything just right. And it's a mechanic that we see in Dirt Rally. We've seen it in other racing games as well. And it works really well, and it's a great way to progress through the career. You have a calendar that you're working to, and that's where all your events come up. There's also loads of different training options as well within the days where you're not actually racing, and they offer a really welcome break between the rallying side of things, which I think in a lot of rally games can get a little bit tedious. And I know it sounds weird, I am a huge fan of rallying games, and there'll be loads of you out there that disagree, but sometimes it can get a little bit tedious just going from event to event to event, just basically doing the same thing over and over again. That was where Dirt, like Dirt 3, Dirt 4, those games had it just right, because you had the different types of events with Gymkhana, Baja trucks, whatever it might be that they've decided to put into that game. It was always nice to go from a rally stage to then go and do Gymkhana, then go back to a bit of rally, just to mix it all up a little bit. And they've got that just right here by having these training events, and there's even like an extreme weather conditions events, things like that, where you're up against horrific weather and your car's absolutely knackered and you've still got to make it down to a certain point. They're just really nice ways to break up the monotony of just doing rally events. Obviously, as you're working through the career, you are unlocking cash as you'd expect, and with that you're paying your teammates and using it to buy various different things. But on top of that, there is also a skill tree within the game, and you're constantly unlocking points to unlock sections of that skill tree which give you different abilities, parts for your car. It feels very much like the R&D part of Formula 1 if you've ever played that career through. And again, I feel like they've borrowed that from them, but it's not a bad thing because it was always a great mechanic within Formula 1. Everything's handled from within your office, very much again like Formula 1, where you'll be receiving emails and different notifications like that. But it all just comes together and seems really good. The one thing I will say though that is a little bit of a negative when it comes to this mode, and it's the whole game to be fair, is actually the menu system can feel a little bit clunky. It's quite difficult to navigate your way around. It's quite a lot of information going on. Obviously that will get easier with time, and I've only been playing it for a certain amount of time, so I'm definitely not fully into it as yet. But so far it just feels a little bit overcomplicated, and sometimes the menus almost feel like they get stuck. You have to go back and then re-enter again. But that's, I'm sure, something that can be easily sorted out with an update at some point. I mean, overall, the game seems great from what I've played so far. I haven't played any multiplayer at all, so I can't comment on that. I have no idea whether you can do private lobbies, whether it's region locked. I'm just not sure at this stage. And aside from some dodgy menus I mentioned earlier, and the fact that sometimes it feels like you're clicking something and it's not doing anything, the only other thing that I really can fault it with at this stage anyway is there is a little bit of popping in and out on the replays. You do see some of the sort of vegetation, I guess, in the background sort of popping into shot, then popping out again, which is a little bit disappointing. But at the same time, it's another thing that I'm sure they can solve with a patch in the future. Yeah, other than that, if you're looking for a rally game, it's a pretty solid option, and I was surprised by that, to be honest with you. And I think it was the fact that I'd heard so much hype. Typically when you hear all the hype like that, it tends to not be quite as good as everyone's made out. But actually, this is, like I say, it's a solid option. But the reason I made this video was for one simple question, and it was the question that kept coming up through all of these reviews and everything I was watching and early gameplays, of whether this game is going to be a dirt killer or not. And the reality is, I don't think it is. Dirt Rally is still fantastic. It will always be good, and I'm sure they will continue to bring us really, really good rallying games. But what we now have is a second option, and it's a very viable option, and it's really good fun. And if you're into rallying games, we're just lucky. We've now got two to choose from, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with it if that's what you're into. And if you're not into rallying games, then I don't think this is the game for you. To be honest, it doesn't do anything differently from any other games out there. It just does what it does well. So if you are into rallying games, then get it, have a go. It's certainly not a bad choice, and I've just been really pleasantly surprised, which was not what I was expecting at all. But I really hope you've enjoyed today's video anyway. If you have, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also use the comment section down below to let me know your thoughts on the game. It would be great to hear them. And don't forget to give the video a like. It really helps them get seen by loads more people and helps me grow the channel. Thanks for sticking to the end, and I'll see you all on the next one.